folks.
Right.
So,
And I appreciate the thought, but again, we want the people that we serve to really feel good when they come because they need it.
they do.
They really need to have the dignity.
So clothes are one thing, and household items and hygiene items, but there are other things too that happen with the Extra Mile, and we have a couple of other programs that we really didn't talk about too much last week when you were on that I did want to at least highlight a little bit. Avec les Enfants is a supervised visitation exchange center. What is that all about?
Well, a couple of years ago, the Extra Mile, in cooperation with a couple of people who identified that there was a need because the non-custodial parent who is court-ordered to visit with their child had no safe place to visit. And so the visits, if I remember right, were taking place at bookstores and fast food restaurants.
And wherever else they could do it.
And wherever else they could use. And of course, then it wasn't a safe place for visits or
children. I mean, just one. It was not a good arrangement.
No, it was not.
And I have to say that certain bookstores didn't like it either.
No, and the judge's hands were tied because really the child needs both parents. And I'm gonna say, I'm gonna say it over and over and over again. The one thing that I keep saying is this is for the children. The parents may not get along, but they are court ordered to visit with the child. The child needs the parent in their life, and we provide a safe place for that visit to take place. We have a part-time employee who coordinates all the visits, who does the intakes, does all the background checks, does whatever's needed. We then have volunteers that go in to monitor the visits. And we train the volunteers on what they need to look for while they're in the room, because the volunteer is in the room.
With the parent and child, or
with
children.
the parent and the child or children, correct. And the visits take place at the Sheriff's Training Center on St. Antoine, and there's security that is provided during those visits. And I don't think at any time that I ever remember was security needed, but it's there.
It's a part of the model
that we use. It's part of the model that is used. So, but we're always looking for volunteers to help, because there's 3 visits that go on at the same time.
Right.
And there's 4 different time slots during that time. So that's 12 volunteers that's needed on one Sunday to monitor the visits. And so we can't continuously ask the same volunteers to volunteer every Sunday. So what we would like to do is have a really huge volunteer base so that we can rotate volunteers out. And it's not just that. I mean, I help out at the visitation center, but this Sunday I may want to go see my son.
Right.
So, because that was the only day he has off. So we also want to have enough volunteers to be able to fill in when we need it. So volunteers are always needed. And again, I want to say these are court ordered, and it's for the kids. The kids need these to visit with the parents. That's
and
important.
really, volunteers, without volunteers, we can't have visits.
Nope.
And so we depend on volunteers to keep families intact.
Right, and honestly,
or to keep children connected with their non-custodial parent. I mean, and that's just a fact.
Right, and if we don't have the volunteers, then the visit's canceled. That's the
right.
bottom line.
That's right.
Because we have to have a volunteer in each room during each visit.
Right. So it's another important opportunity to
volunteer,
to serve.
Yeah, and again, to help out the community. You have to see the kid's face when they see their parent. I mean, they love their mom or they love their daddy.
They do.
It's just very important that they have that connection for their health and well-being.
And we know that research shows that children need to have a relationship with both biological parents.
So. And again, I want to make sure that everybody understands. We're not talking about the parents. We're talking about the child that's visiting with the parent.
Right. We are not umpiring and refereeing disputes among adults. We're just simply keeping families connected in ways that are safe.
Correct.
And I guess the other program that I do want to talk about that we didn't talk about last time is the Carefree Counseling Program, which is another
volunteer program,
unfunded program that I personally think is having a huge impact on this community and needs a lot more recognition than it gets.
And I agree with you. The Carefree Program is, we have 18 active therapists that volunteer.
Mental health therapists.
Mental health therapists, licensed licensed mental health therapists that volunteer with the Carefree program. And there's no charge, again, for this service to the client, and there's no money paid to the therapist. It is totally volunteer. The person calls the extra mile. I do the intake on what the need is and match the person who has called with a therapist, depending upon the need of what the therapist is willing to do counseling on. Let's say we have a therapist that just does eating disorders, or one may just want to do depression. I have one that doesn't want to do dual diagnosis, which is a mental illness and an addictive disorders. You know, he'll do one or the other, but
Just
not
don't want to do the two
doesn't
together.
want to do
Okay.
the two together. And we have others that want to do dual diagnosis. So again, I take the information down from the person who is calling and then match them with the therapist. Now, the problem that we're having is, of course, we don't have enough therapists to meet the needs of the community, especially with all the funding cutbacks in the state right now and the criteria to meet the state mental health services. We have the calls coming into the office are tremendous. Mm-hmm. And Carefree is also only meant to be a 6 to 8 week therapy program.
Right, short term, get in, get out.
Right, get in, get out. But again, it's up to the therapist. Once the therapist is seeing the client, then it is up to them to determine if they want to go longer or not. And more times than most, the therapist does choose to go longer. Others are sticking strictly to the 6 to 8 weeks. So again, it's totally up to the therapist.